heart for that. So, thank you, Jonathan. Thank y'all very much for being here. It's a great honor to be here, and it's always wonderful to be home. Let me turn this off so we won't be interrupted here by my phone. Y'all may, if y'all have phones, if y'all want to put them to vibrate, that would be great. It is great to be home. I will. There's no bed to sleep like your own bed, as we all know, and our cooking is pretty good down here. So it's nice to be home and enjoy our cooking. You know, when we started as a representative, we wanted to make sure that we connected the people to their government. And so in fulfilling our desire to do that, we are having our town hall meetings around the district. We want to do 16 a year because we have 16 counties, and we do that in a different area. The one we had last year was down in Port St. Joe, so this year we're here in Wewahitchka. So many of the communities have 2 or 3 major towns in their county, and so we're literally moving around to make sure that we're mobile and we're going to where the people are. So we're going to continue to do this. This week we have one here, we have one tonight in Panama City. We're going to be in Liberty County, Calhoun County. I think over the 2-week break that we're here in the district, we're going to have close to 8, I think, 8 town hall meetings. So we're going to continue to make our good friends with the Florida Democratic Party burn some mileage and travel all around our district. So they're going to have to spend some money to film me. And so we're going to be busy. And so in doing so, though, we're going to report to you as to what we're doing personally in legislation that we are sponsoring and being a part of, as well as what Washington is doing overall, moving us forward. So we're going to report to you and then answer your questions. One of the things that we have found in our desire to be a representative rather than a congressman, and that's kind of the way we've gone at public service. Congressman, this seems to be about the person who has actually got the title. To me, when you're a representative, it lets everyone know that you are here to serve and represent the people that you are working for. So our desire is to be a representative. And in that desire, it's not just about us talking. It's about us listening. So I want to give anyone here today an opportunity to be able to ask a question or to blow off steam, to share your frustration, because we have noticed that over the last several years, America's frustration with the direction our country has been going is continuing to mount. So this is an opportunity for you to speak your piece, and I thank you so much on a day when many people are working, or if you're not working, many people are thinking about the cobia running offshore. There are other things you could be doing. So thank you very much. I know a few moments ago we met with your elected officials. Many of them are here today. We met with county and city commissioners and members of your delegation, your superintendent, your sheriff. Sheriff is here, and just to kind of get feedback from a local standpoint. So we had a good meeting today, and then obviously we're going to have this town hall meeting and then head over to Panama City for our meeting tonight. I want to say that Jonathan mentioned, he introduced the staff, and there's no way that we could do what we do, serve 16 counties, the largest congressional district in the state of Florida, over 12,000 square miles, 2 time zones. There's no way we could do this, or I could do this, apart from our team. We have a great team in our Panama City office, a great team in our Tallahassee office, and so when we're over on the east side of the district, we have a lot of our Tallahassee folks that join us, and we have wonderful individuals in our office that work, to help our constituents with Social Security or veterans issues, veterans benefits. Obviously meeting with our local elected officials on issues that are important to their constituents. So we could not do it without our staff. Also want to thank law enforcement. They've always been wonderful about having a presence at our gatherings. Unfortunately, following the event that occurred in Arizona, we always have to now be very mindful that when we're meeting with the general public, that there is an opportunity for some that mean us harm But I will tell you always to have the sheriff and deputies at our events is wonderful. So with that being said, I want to explain to you a little bit, and I've got some slides that we're going to share with you. I want to say that in this Congress, clearly the most important thing that we are dealing with, bar none, and everything we do is really in front of a backdrop that is clearly the largest challenge we face as America today, and that is a growing national debt. We owe, as a country, nearly $16 trillion in debt. And many countries who don't necessarily appreciate our way of life here, or our belief on human rights, or the fact that we derived our rights from the God who made us, they own much of that debt. And so therefore, it is not, in my opinion, it is not in the best position for America to be. And every decision that we make is in light of that, because every decision we make has to do with money. And so in our attempt going forward to solve the many challenges that we face, it is in front of that backdrop. And there are some brutal facts that I want to make sure that people know about that debt. I promised when we ran we were going to be very truthful with you. And so we're going to continue to share with you information that comes from nonpartisan sources, like the Congressional Budget Office that scores bills and the cost of bills, like the Department of Treasury. Those are resources that we use and that every office uses in order to tell the constituents of our districts the facts. And so I'm going to share with you some numbers that are probably a little disturbing to you. I would hope that they're disturbing, because when these are not disturbing to you, then the problem's even bigger than sometimes what I think it is. It is indisputable that this is the amount of money that our national debt by the end of 2012. Right now, it's currently just under that figure. We're approaching the 16 trillion, but that's by the end of 2012. It is a fact that this president has 4 consecutive $1 trillion deficits. Just last month, the president put on my desk and those members of Congress his budget request for 2013. It again exceeded $1 trillion in debt. If you look at, and let me say this, when the president puts forth a budget request, and that's all it is, because it is Congress's responsibility to pass a budget. We control the purse strings. Now, I will say that we have done that, as we did last year, and we just recently did so, but unfortunately we have a Senate partner chamber that has not passed a budget in over 1,000 days. 1,000 days. Now, no, we've got elected members of various bodies in the office today. Have any of you in an elected position, have any of you not had to operate within a budget? No. You don't. So you have to, whether you're the sheriff or you're the superintendent or you're a county commission or a city commission, it is a requirement. The people you represent demand that you operate within a budget. Unfortunately, my Senate partners don't necessarily agree with that. If you look at where we're going, based on the president's budget request, and that budget request is kind of a vision of the direction, well, it's not kind of, it is a vision of where the president wants us to go over the next 10 years. It's always 10-year projections. So in the president's budget request, by the end of 2022, our national debt would grow from this to nearly $26 trillion. Now, the reason that that's important is because if that occurs, that's the direction we're going, and that's the trajectory we're on right now, we will pay nearly $6 trillion in interest payments alone, each and every year. Now, we've all made mistakes in spending. We've all gone out, perhaps at some point in time in your youth, and you've gone out and you've taken that plastic and you've swiped that plastic, and you put it on a credit card. And then you were amazed, astonished. And when the bill came in, you looked down and the credit card company was so kind to tell you how much was principal. But then they told you the real damning part, how much you owed in interest. And you're going, oh my gosh. I mean, I bought this for $1,000 and this is what I owe month in and month out, the interest. And you know that it is a mountain a mountain challenge to have to try to pay off that interest. This right here, we're creating a tsunami that we don't have the ability to outrun. If you look at $1.9 trillion in new taxes, we've got if the health care bill becomes law, which obviously this week was a very interesting week in Washington D.C. because we had, as you know, the Supreme Court hearing the health care bill on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. So it was fascinating to hear, and we will hear their ruling on that probably by June, sometime around June. Another thing that I think is very noteworthy, the federal debt will account for 106% of GDP this year. Now, our annual gross domestic product, in other words, all of the economic activity in this country, amounts to around $15 trillion a year. All the things we produce, the economic activity of all 50 states generates around $15 trillion annually. Now, in January, we went over $15 trillion in gross domestic product. So what we're on as a pace, we had a deficit, I think, in February alone. February alone's deficit was like $225 billion, just in 28 days. So we are continuing to make this an issue that we are going to have to deal with, or we are going to give our children the worst economic situation any generation has known in this country in over 200 years. I've had people say to me, well, how do you get your arms around $16 trillion? It's almost impossible to fathom how big a hole that is. So the only way that I know how to put it in terms that people can recognize the magnitude of it is liken it to one other hole that I've seen that just took my breath away. How many of you have ever been to the Grand Canyon? I'm going to ask you, remember the day you were there? Remember that day? Remember getting out of your car, going up through the visitor center? And remember the first time that you walked up to that rail? And your very first, a couple things happened to me. First of all, I took a deep breath. It was, and then the second thing I did is I took a step back. It demanded your attention. It demanded your recognition that this is unlike anything I have ever seen in my life. And as you got closer, you got a little comfortable with it. You said, okay, is that rail sturdy? And then once you walked up to the rail, you held onto that rail. And you looked at the breadth, the depth. You went, oh my goodness. This is clearly one of the wonders of the world. I know of no better way to describe that than with the same description that I just gave you on the Grand Canyon. And if we love our children, I'm assuming everyone in here does. If we care for our children, I just don't understand how any group of leaders would allow us to go into an economic disaster, which is arguably the most predictable disaster we would ever face. We know more about this coming disaster than we knew about Hitler. We know this is coming. We can see other countries that are doing exactly what we're doing on a much smaller scale because there is no other country that has that wonder of the world. There is no other country that can bail us out. There's no European Union that can bail us out. We have the largest economy in the world. And our day of reckoning is coming. And so therefore, I've been very truthful that I am not going to D.C. to just pass a deal. We're there to find solutions. Solutions that sometimes are going to be very difficult, going to be very painful. But there's no easy way around that. Now, for everybody's, because I always have people in an audience that have varying views on that. I have some people say, well, go up there, and our expectation is that you balance that budget, and you solve that problem, and you do it in one term. I have people say this to me, well, if you would go up there and just eliminate foreign aid, okay, foreign aid. Foreign aid would be like taking a shovel and digging about a 5-gallon hole and saying, there's the Grand Canyon, that's that, and foreign aid represents that little 5-gallon hole we just dug. Foreign aid represents 1/2 of 1%. 1/2 of 1%. Our problem is much bigger than just eliminating foreign aid. It is systematic. Government spending in the last 3 years, if you factor in the stimulus monies, government spending at the department level has increased 83%. And I'm talking about discretionary spending. Not non-discretionary, but discretionary spending. 83%. Has anyone in this room, Democrat, Republican, Independent, has anyone who could fog a mirror in this room experienced 83% increase in spending in the last 3 years? Anybody? Doesn't matter whether you're overseeing a church congregation. I don't know of a church congregation that's experienced 83% coming into play. I know you have. No, you haven't. But there is an entity that has. It's 1,000 miles from here. There is no recession there. Matter of fact, you almost need a passport to go there, because you might as well be on another continent. I'd almost say another planet. Because they're so far away from the cries of the people and the brutal reality facing America right now. There are construction cranes everywhere, as I mentioned to the group earlier. They're building buildings. You can still buy and flip homes. The 5 wealthiest counties in America are the 5 counties surrounding Washington, D.C. Is that acceptable to anyone? Again, I want to be very fair. Of any party, is that acceptable? While the states have the requirement of a balanced budget, while the counties must balance their budget, the school boards must balance their budget, the sheriff departments must balance their budget, we're having to do more with less. The federal government is doing more with more. So, I share that with you because those are some disturbing trends. Now, I want to be very, very fair to the Florida Democratic Party. These problems didn't start 3 years ago. You won't see that again in an ad. I want to be very fair. I was furious with the previous administration because government grew at a pace not seen in an awful long time. This is a right and wrong issue. This is not a Democrat-Republican issue. There are plenty of people in Washington, D.C. that need to go home, that have fallen out of touch with the American people. So, let's go to the next screen. I share this because this is President Obama's chairman, who he appointed as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 2010. He made this statement: I think the biggest threat we have to our national security is our debt. Wouldn't you think that this man, who spent his entire career in the military, would have said something like, I don't know, Ahmadinejad and Iran and their pursuit of nuclear proliferation? Or how about North Korea, who are continuing to push and launch long-range missiles, okay, in defiance of UN rules? You know, I would have thought maybe he would have said, I don't know, maybe Al-Qaeda. Maybe the Taliban. But no, he didn't say that. The biggest threat. Not a big threat. Not a difficult threat, but the biggest threat we have to our national security, not just to defense, not just to the Navy or the Air Force, or no. To our national security. Anybody in here not concerned with national security? You don't have to spend a day in the military to care about national security. It's our debt. It's our debt. It is literally taxing future generations with no representation. None. Because it affects everything we do in Washington, D.C. Now, there's some trends that bother me. Number one, we've got 36 straight months of above 8% unemployment. 36 months of above 8% unemployment. A lot of people have left the job, left the workforce. They're not even looking for jobs anymore. An interesting statistic that nobody ever seems to want to talk about is the incredible increase in college entrance. Because when people don't think they can find a job, they go back and they get educated. They pursue education. All right? Now, I have daughters in college. I think we need to pursue education. But I also think that when kids, young people, and adults changing careers midstream, that they should have jobs that are going to be waiting for them when they get through with their educational experience. But if you look at the increase in registration and attendance in college, it's continuing to rise. And by the way, that number is not reflected in unemployment. When you go, and all those that leave the job force and go into colleges around this country, those numbers are no longer reflected in the unemployment rate. Just like people who stop looking. 29% of unemployed are jobless for over a year. 1.1 million Americans stopped looking for work. Bureau of Labor Statistics say that almost 550,000 private sector jobs lost since 2009. This recession that we are coming out of, granted, that we are moving through, has been incredibly brutal to small business. Over 40% of the unemployment has come from small business. Well, let me tell you where it's not come from. It's not come from the federal employee workforce. Because they hire as fast as they can. Because when them cranes get through building those big buildings, and by the way, I can stand on the speaker's balcony, in the backside of the Capitol, looking down the mall, and just with my eyesight, me and Jeff Duncan from South Carolina counted nine construction cranes that were over 15 stories tall, running and gunning, man. And that's just a small part of the city. I couldn't count 9 construction cranes in all of Florida that size. They're not listening up there. One of the things that's been so damaging to small businesses has been regulation. We are becoming a regulation nation. If you got something you enjoy, it's regulated. Almost 39 million hours of paperwork burden a year. That's insane. That's lost productivity. Lost productivity. And let me say this, I've been appointed by governors in the past. I've served on regulatory boards. I've had 2 gubernatorial appointments by Democrat and a gubernatorial appointment by Republican. To regulatory boards. We've got to have smart, sensible regulation. But we also have to know when the cost of those regulations are not factored in to the implementation of those regulations, and departments don't have to worry about the economic impact of those regulations, then there are unintended consequences, and it crushes jobs. $46 billion in new regulatory costs this year alone. $46 billion. More than 10,000 new rules since January of 2009. Now, I don't remember the Congress that ceded its responsibility and gave the regulatory agencies the responsibility or the ability to create regulations without congressional oversight. But that was they should have never gotten a paycheck that week. Because what we've done is we've created, in my opinion, a 4th branch of government. A 4th branch of government that has no oversight. I mean, when a department does not have to answer to Congress, does not have to answer to the American people, all they have to do is pass regulation, which guarantees having to hire new people to follow that regulation, and not have to worry about the impact of those regulations. This is madness. And the federal government is growing out of control. When I ran, and since I've been there, I've been very clear that the states should have more power to determine the future of its citizens. The counties should have more authority and more power. Not a federal bureaucrat 1,000 miles from here that has never had the benefit of pouring Tupelo honey on top of a biscuit. And wouldn't know mullet and cheese grits and hush puppies and a glass of sweet tea if they smelt it. I want people that know our life here to have more say in determining our future. And so I've been very clear. I think I've been very consistent that I'm about pushing more authority to the states because there is, yes sir?
I think that the state has too much authority and the county has too much authority and the federal government has too much authority. As somebody who's been involved in construction in this area for almost 30 years, building churches and other things, I can tell you that the county and the state of Florida have cost me thousands of dollars and added thousands of dollars to people's homes. They've all got too much authority. They don't need any more. They need less. We need to get rid of bureaucrats on every level, starting in this county.
Well, I share that opinion. I know on a federal level, I am obviously, as you know, I'm not elected to the Florida House. I'm not a county commissioner here, so the one I can speak, mainly to with greatest clarity is what I'm seeing in Washington D.C.
Yeah, but you said you wanted more power to the states.
I wanted the states to have more say as opposed to the federal. Okay, I want to make sure that we get this straight, that everybody hears exactly what I'm saying. Did anyone misunderstand my comment?
I did.
Okay, well that's why we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation so you understand crystal clear what I'm saying. The federal government has too much authority over our lives as compared to the state and the local government entities. It has too much. It's out of balance. Our founding fathers created the 10th Amendment. They created a 10th Amendment to protect the states. And what I'm seeing is a trampling every week of the 10th Amendment. I do believe in President Ronald Reagan's statement when he said, government does govern best when it governs closest to the people. That just makes sense. Well, there's nothing close to most people about the federal government 1,000 miles from here. So I can't disagree with you, and I want to be very careful. I think there's credence in what you say. I think but today I'm here to speak as a representative of you on the federal level, that I am not pleased with what I see on a federal level. I'm not pleased with the imbalance that I think exists. So I want to be very clear that I'm not advocating for more state power or more county power in and of itself as endorsing greater power. I'm just saying that in comparison, okay? We talked earlier about a fish ban, the net ban. Well, that net ban affects nobody more in the state than the citizens of Franklin County, Gulf County, and Bay County. All right? That's a state issue. It's not a federal issue. That's a state issue. And I really don't believe that it was ever the intent of the citizens of the state of Florida to absolutely eliminate, totally, us catching mullet, with nets. I don't think that was the intent. I think it was sold as something it was not. And I think the people that sold it that way did a masterful job. I disagree with the job they did. I think the unintended consequences have caused more financial harm to Wakulla, and I need to throw Wakulla County in there, Wakulla, Franklin, Gulf, and Bay counties because of our bays. If you built churches, well, then you certainly had church fish fries. Oh yeah, not with mullet anymore. I mean, how many people? Not to the numbers that we've seen.
The last one we had was the Chinese catfish.
That's in our best interest. Yeah. So my point is, Pastor, I want to be very clear. I mean, I'm not condoning more growth of federal government. Of state and local government. What I'm saying is, in comparison, we need to get back to the balance that I think our original.
Thanks for clarifying that. I'm with you on that because I'm tired of the federal government doing what it's doing now too, like everybody in this room probably.
No, I think for a small business to want to come here, or let's say you got a large employer that wants to come here and they want to create jobs in Gulf County, okay? For the county commission not to do everything that the county commission should do to streamline a permitting process for that potential employer is insane.
Right.
So, I understand that the greatest stimulus for a community is a job. A job. Because that job is going to create economic movement at grocery stores, at dentist offices, at the sporting goods store. Even on Sunday, sir, with a job, they can tithe. It even applies to you. So my point is and I'm seeing in our district, I'm seeing county commissions obviously going to church on Sunday and getting right with Jesus. Because they understand that unless they create an economic environment, it's not government's responsibility to create a job. It's government's responsibility to create an environment that is conducive for job growth. And so therefore what we've got to do is I'm seeing the rural counties. It's a lot simpler in a rural county, that when they focus on economic development, they say, you know what, the best thing we can do as county commissioners is we can make our county attractive to investors. And if time is money, speed is profit for an investor. You want jobs. I haven't seen anybody that didn't want a job in their community. You've got to make an environment where investors want to come here and put up a shingle. And the one thing that tells them you don't want them is a permitting process that will drive them to another county. And a tax rate in a county or in a state that drives them to the next state. The state of Illinois raised their corporate tax rate to 65%. You want to go there? You know who loved that? Indiana. Kentucky. Come here, man. Just over that river, man. They're gonna kill you over there. So the point is you got to make it. It's got to make sense. I read an article this morning that said that Japan, who had the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 39.8, just dropped their tax rate to 36 something, which means that the United States of America now has the highest corporate tax rate of any developed country in the world. This isn't complicated. This really isn't hard. You may have had members of Congress in the past that tell you that this is difficult. No. If you got walking around sense, you can figure this out. You create an adversarial relationship through regulation, through taxation, through hassle. Just hassle. Those companies will move on. They won't be here. Your sheriff budget will continue to shrink. Your county, city commission budgets will continue to shrink. You won't have a tax base. So, and this is happening across this country, and it breaks my heart because I believe that American workers, when given the opportunity, when unleashed and allowed to be creative, when allowed to work hard, innovative, we produce the finest products and services the world has ever seen. But right now, we got them tied up under kudzu of regulation, taxation, the burdensome environment that they have to operate in. It's not hard to figure out what's going to happen going forward. And I see no evidence at all, none, that this administration is taking its foot off of the gas pedal regarding pushing that more and more and more and more and more. The president was very clear when he ran. If you elect me, I will fundamentally transform America. That's his words, not mine. I will fundamentally transform America. You tell me. You determine that. I mean, America is not a perfect nation. There is no perfect nation. Just like Pastor, my dad told me a long time ago, son, don't ever join a perfect church. If you do, you'll ruin it. What Dad was telling me is that no human being is perfect. No nation is perfect. Every church, if touched by human hands, has flaws, has problems, has challenges. That's why sinners go there. Honest people go there. Because they're dealing with the recognition of the brutal reality that they're not perfect. The point is no country is perfect. But I was not aware that America, the last great hope, in my opinion, for true freedom, needed to be fundamentally transformed. And that is a transformation down to our DNA. I mean, that is to totally change. I'm amazed when I speak to people whose family has come here in the last 30 to 40 years from other countries around the world. I'm amazed when I sit with someone whose family came from Cuba and they tell me, America's going nuts. I've lived this nightmare. They get it. They get it. So it is very, very bothersome. Now, I know we're going, we may not be able to go through all this, so I don't want to be the only one talking. You asked a question. Thank you for doing so and making sure that we're clarified. I know just for the purpose of time, what I want to hear from you is, I think, more important than what you want to hear from me. Is there any, let's just start asking some questions. Are there any questions or comments that any of you want to make?
Do you want to address the gas prices and gas
Sure.
being refused to come down to?
Well, the question was, do I want to address the gas prices? Look, I don't care whether you're a 12-year-old mowing grass for the summer to get spending money, or you're in the lawn service, or you're a crossroad, transportation, you're a trucker, or if you have a sheriff's department. Can't imagine what your fuel. It's going to affect everything, everybody. It's going to affect the cost of milk. It's going to affect the price of bread. It's going to affect everything, because all those things have one thing in common. Those are delivered using gasoline. So the rising gas prices are going to continue. I am very aggravated that the president continues to follow through with his comment that he made in 2009. And his comment was that he believes it is necessary for gas prices to continue to rise and be more in line with gas prices in Europe, which are $8, $9 a gallon, in order to bring the American people to such a condition of pain that we go in a different direction. Now, because I know that currently, right now, I can't run my family's Suburban on wind. The only other direction, and when you have $4 and a lab and a family, if you don't want to buy multiple vehicles to transport, there's not a lot of options to haul all of that. Okay, then I guess we can all take our bodies. So I believe, when the president does make a statement that we need all of the above. Okay, all right, he's trying to sound responsible, but his actions are not all the above. I'm not against solar. Look, I think we need to continue our pursuit of that. Wind. I think, natural gas. I think, but what the president meant to say is that, we need to do all the above, but I'm going to continue to do what I got to do to make sure those gas prices continue to rise.
But he promised when he was...
Promise.
Well, remember when he said what he'd do about it if he got to be president, how wrong George Bush was.
Well, I know this. The president makes this statement, and I want to be very clear. I've agreed with the president on certain things, and I've disagreed with him on much. He and I agreed on the free trade agreements with Colombia and Panama and South Korea. He and I agreed on the repeal of the 1099 rule that was inside of the health care bill to make every small business file a 1099. Now, you file a 1099 with anyone you spend more than $600 with. What a nightmare that is. For what? For what purpose? Well, again, putting people in those big granite buildings. Okay? Because it serves no purpose. So the president and I agreed that, hey, but it was his piece of legislation anyway. Well, I put that in there if less than a year that it was passed, you would repeal it and take it out. Well, there's a lot of things in that bill that I think that people aren't aware of, but we're finding out. I think that the gas prices are one that are going to continue to rub the American people wrong. And why? Because it's not necessary. The Keystone Pipeline project is a perfect example of that. I think we all know the environmentalists clearly have the president, they've clearly got their boot on his neck. The president says that we're not going to pursue the Keystone Pipeline project because of the environment. Well, one of the things that people don't know is it was one particular county in Nebraska that had an issue with the pipeline project coming through that county. So that county was eliminated, and they went around the county. The environmental impact studies have all been done. We don't need to study anymore. We don't need to study anymore. The studies have been done. My question to the president, if I had an opportunity to speak to him one-on-one, would be this. Your point is because of the environmental chance of a problem, is what he claims is the reason he doesn't agree with the Keystone Pipeline project. What is environmentally safe about Canada taking that oil, building a pipeline over the Canadian Rockies to the Pacific Ocean, pumping that oil into tankers, and then having those tankers navigate the ocean, storms, ice, all kind of problems, all kind of possible challenges. Imagine this, to China, who's got a really good standard of economic policies, environmental policies. They don't. If you're an environmentalist, and we may have some here, what is safe and sound with that reasoning? At least in America, we do have standards for environmental. It's a concern by everybody. We're going to make sure. That's why we got the EPA. They're going to make sure that it's done right, and if there's not, there's going to be a penalty. Well, they don't have a system like that in China. They're building one coal plant a week in China. One a week. So I don't understand how the president has any credibility there when he says, hey, we're not going to build the Keystone Pipeline, the largest ready-made, shovel-ready project in American history, because of environmental concerns.
And you won't do anything to change his mind.
The comment was, we can't do anything to change his mind. No, I think President Barack Obama's mind is pretty well made up for him. So he's look. This is ideology here, and so I think that it's we all know that if you want to increase the price, if you want to decrease the price of anything, you got to have more of it. That's simple. The president made the comment about a month ago on TV. The president made the comment. He said, look, gas prices are going up because of the reduction of supply in the Middle East. So he acknowledges that supply is a part of the equation. He then said it's also going up because of the increased demand in China. So he acknowledges that demand is a part of the equation. So if you acknowledge that supply and demand is a part of the equation to bring down prices or for prices to increase, then why would the president continue under Energy Secretary Chu, who's been very clear, they have no intention of changing direction? Yes, sir.
On a slightly different subject, the census that was taken a while back is still apparently continuing, because a couple of weeks ago I got a very long form that I was supposed to fill out, and I decided I wasn't going to fill it out. Then they sent me another one, and I'm still not going to fill it out. And last night, right in the middle of hee-haw, I got a phone call from a very lovely lady who is one of those government employees who has a special, nice little job of calling people like me. And she said...
On a Sunday night?
Yes. She was trying to find out all the information that's on it. I said, it's none of the government's business. And it isn't. I happen to know that the census law is very limited and very narrow, and it doesn't really need to know all of that stuff. And she said that it was for Homeland Security. I am starting to be afraid of Homeland Security. They've already screwed up the airports. They're hazardous to the people who are really trying to protect the borders with Mexico. They're a dangerous group. And now we find out that they're buying all kinds of weapons and munitions. I'm wondering. Now, I'm not an alarmist, and I'm not some kind of a person who's an anarchist, but I have the feeling that we're headed toward some kind of a civilian militia that is being run by the Homeland Security. And I'd like to know why we have a military if we need that. And this is getting under my skin. And she said it was mandatory that I fill that out. Well, I told her that it is not mandatory. There's no reason why I should give anybody any information that I don't want to give them. I wouldn't give that information to my bank, Jerry. They come knocking on my door too.
Well,
Well, enough is enough of this government intrusion.
well, let me
I
look.
want you to stop it.
Look. If I were king for a day, there'd be a lot of changes. But I think the Constitution. Look, I'm very concerned with so much that I see going on is contrary. I think our founding fathers would roll over in their grave if
I'm rolling over now.
if they So I'm never gonna agree. First of all, let me say this. It bothers me that we have a nation that we. First of all, it bothers me you're going to get a call on Sunday. Now, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. All right? And if that's not been, if people don't recall that from their education, and they don't recall that from history, well, then perhaps we need to look at the history curriculum. But we are a Judeo-Christian nation with a background and a history that confirms that. So with that being said, Sunday's a day that we rest. Sunday's a day that we and I grew up in a business where, obviously, growing up in the funeral business, we have to work on Sundays when people call us, and I know it's a work day for you, Pastor. But I'm bothered that there are just some things that we see going on today that just never happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And Homeland Security and some of the, and I've even heard that TSA has a presence on trains, especially up the Atlantic seaboard, that they're expanding their that's what we have local law enforcement for. That is what we have and we have FBI and we have other institutions but to take a TSA and expand it to our highways and to me, it's just another opportunity to grow government. And so I think, and let me say this: government doesn't grow in areas that doesn't take over somebody else's area. I mean, I've got some crabgrass in my yard, and it infuriates me because it's taking over where some beautiful St. Augustine was, and I can't grow both because crabgrass doesn't ever stay within the lines. Crabgrass is never satisfied.
And it won't be long, and they won't allow you to buy the poison to kill it.
Well, and if you look at, and let me tell you this: if you go to the store, it's the 14, which is the St. Augustine that we grow. It's hard to even find stuff to kill the crabgrass. So the point is, because the federal government's protecting me. Thank you.
You spoke of us being a Judeo-Christian nation, and we are supposed to be, but government is taking us further and further from that. I just started reading a book called When the Crosses Are Gone.
Called what?
When the Crosses Are Gone.
Yeah.
And it makes reference in there to the new visitors center in Washington that cost over $620 million. Was about $20 million over budget.
There's actually a lot more than that.
Probably more than that over, yes, probably. But how they seem to go out of their way to eliminate any reference to our being a Christian nation founded on Christian principles. And this is disturbing because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And yet other faiths have every opportunity to express themselves, but we don't have that privilege to express ourselves.
Yeah, let me, and this is very personal for me. Okay, and I don't, because as a Christian, I think that I should have, we have religious freedoms here in this country, and I think sometimes that many of the opposition on the other side of the aisle want to talk about tolerance, unless we're talking about Jesus. I mean, we need to have tolerance as long as we're talking about Muhammad and Buddha and the other. And let me say this: people, if that's how they worship and that's their faith, I have no issue with it. That's their choice. Okay. What I have a choice is when we probably something you haven't heard in this administration or seen. When we pick and choose winners, pick and choose winners. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And whether we pick and choose a country, overseas, whether we pick and choose that the people in Libya have more value than the people in the Ivory Coast or the people in Syria, or whether we choose and we say, you know what, the people in Detroit, those companies have more importance to our agenda than other companies around the country, or whether a certain bank we choose will survive over another bank that we choose will fail. The picking and choosing, this administration has been very, very consistent. Picking and choosing being a part of everything they do. And I think that we, and I don't want any more. I just want what is mine. And as a Christian, to be able to stand up and proclaim my faith, personal faith, deep, abiding faith in Jesus Christ, the author and finisher of my faith. And to ever be in an environment where I should shy away from that or be embarrassed in that, while at the same time having to sit there and listen that a government is not just allowing, but encouraging other faiths while preaching to me about tolerance. Makes me want to throw up. Is that clear? Did we get that? Did we video that? Good. I was in Philadelphia. On that, I was in Philadelphia a couple months ago. And I was at, I was there to watch where obviously our founding fathers in 1787 penned signed the Constitution, 1787. We walked across the street and we saw the Liberty Bell. I don't know if you've been to the new visitor center up there. It's very well done, and it's right across the street from the hall, and it's neat. What I found so offensive to my core, and I didn't want to embarrass, but it was offensive. We had a tour. Okay, the Department of Interior, it's a park, so we had a tour guide.